Nice to see you, Dr. Bruce Lipton.
I am happy to be here with you. Thank you so very much for the invitation.
I'm excited to have you. You know, I don't know if you know, but I met you in the early days when you did some talks with the Atom Dream Healer in Vancouver.
Yes.
So I went to I went to that lecture. Then you were a speaker at a Chinese medicine conference in Vancouver. I met you
Yes.
there. We talked at that time. I had a young kid about vaccinations, and you talked about my beliefs. And then most recently, I was in Nanaimo when you spoke with Joe and Greg and the gang, and you signed my book because I've had your book for ages, and I got you to sign my book as well. So now I get to interview you, which I think is such a pleasure and a privilege.
Well, I am honored because you have a voice out there and you have an audience out there, and it's significant that to give the messages of empowerment to people at this time when the world looks so crazy to them. I don't want them to give up. I appreciate the opportunity you provide me with talking to the community.
Excellent. Well, then we're going to get right into it then, because again, that is my intention today, is my audience through the online platform I have called Healthy Seminars has tons of acupuncturists, naturopaths, and functional medicine. And then my clinic in Vancouver, Acubalance, the public. And I really want to do my role of spreading consciousness and what we can do as individuals to help heal our minds and heal our planets. And so that's kind of what my intention is. And, I figured it'd be fun to talk to what I think of you as the biologist who's transformed into the spiritualist.
Well, it's a true story, and I'm very happy for it, too, because in retrospect, it's like I have a heck of a better life now than I did before doing that. That's for sure.
And that's what I want to share with the audience. And it's nice when, I think a lot of people like to use science to demystify the mysticism. And there's a lot of people for centuries who've talked about a lot of the stuff you're sharing. However, it was purely almost faith-based. And I like the fact that you're able to bring science, because our society, and myself included, when we can kind of measure it or understand it a little bit with our five senses, we feel a little bit better. And I think that's what you bring to this conversation, is the fact that you can bring your background as a biologist and really understanding on a cellular level what's happening with consciousness and this discussion we're about to have.
Well, yeah, Lorne, I think the whole idea simply is that in today's civilization, science has attained the position of truth provider. So it used to be the church in the last civilization. You want some answer, you go to the church, and the guy in the black coat gives it to you. And today, you go to the science, and the guy in the white coat gives you the answer. And then all of a sudden, it brings it into the realm of, oh, that sounds respectable.
Well, let's warm up the audience, because I think many of the people that are tuning into this, that are watching this, are familiar with your podcast, your videos, your books. And let me just give a shout out that if you're interested in knowing more and hearing more from Bruce Lipton, his website is brucelipton.com. He's got his books there. I highly recommend that. Maybe you have more now, but the three I've read is Biology of Beliefs, Spontaneous Evolution, and the Honeymoon Effect. So those are available on your website. He has a newsletter. He has an online program where he's giving discourses on a regular basis. So go to brucelipton.com, and then you can find all these resources and books regarding Bruce. What I wanted to warm them up with, because some people may be new to hearing this idea of consciousness and the work that you're
really
could be some.
Really, we didn't talk to everybody yet.
Yeah, you haven't reached everybody yet, but this is our goal. And so I thought, just to start off with, I love your discussion about genetics versus epigenetics. And the takeaway is, basically my understanding is we can't be victims anymore based on the science of showing how our thoughts affect our genes. Can you give an explanation about this epigenetic versus genetics and how we can't be victims anymore?
Okay, well, the first understanding is this, that conventional belief deals with the fact that genes apparently control the characteristics of our life. And it first started out as physical characteristics, and then genes were, led to be leaders of our behavior, and genes influencing our emotion. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh, we perceive ourselves to be genetic automatons, that the genes in our body control our fate. And I say, well, wait a second. I say, as far as you know, you didn't pick the genes you came with, okay? If you don't like the characteristics, you can't change the genes that you came with. And lastly, the genes, we are told, turn on and off by themselves, which then leaves us out of that control mechanism. And you put all those pieces together and it's like, oh my God, my life is controlled by genes and I don't control my genes. And therefore, I'm not in control of my life. And once people are imbued with that belief, they immediately lock into victim. Oh, I've got genes that are going to kill me. I've got genes that are going to cause cancer. I got genes that give me Alzheimer's. Like, I'm just waiting for the day when those genes do it. And that takes power out of an individual's life. I am not powerful in creating my life. My genes are. That was the program, okay? And that's what I was teaching medical students early on when I was doing my research. But research started to reveal that genetically identical cells, different environments, have totally different experiences and expressions. In other words, while genes may have, cells may all have the same genes, it was the environment that determined the character or quality of life for those cells. And I go, well, what's the relevance here? And I say, we are the ones that determine the character of the environment. So if genes are controlled by environment, first they have to be, the environment is picked up by our consciousness, nervous system, and then we make an interpretation of that environment, and then we send signals to the cells to say, this is what the environment is, what are you going to do now to keep us alive in this environment? So basically the difference is this: genes and genetics tell us what we're going to do. And the current understanding of epigenetics, and it sounds like the same, but let's emphasize the most important little 3 letters there, epi. Epi means above. So skin is called epidermis. And the reason for that is below the layer, the top layer of the skin is a layer called the dermis. So epidermis means above the dermis. Epigenetics means control above the genes. And now we recognize that the environment that we interpret is what actually is controlling our genetic activity. I say, well, significance is this: if I change my interpretation of the environment or my perceptions of life, then by definition, I change my genetics. And all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute, then I'm in charge of my genetics, not the environment. I go, that's the big difference. Most people are programmed, I'm a victim, cancer's running in my family, I probably have this so-called cancer gene, and I'm going to get cancer, and automatically their consciousness is focused on, oh, I'm anticipating any time now to get that cancer, versus epigenetics that says, wait, I control the activity of the genes based on my perception. If I change my perception, I change my biology. I go, absolutely 100%. Therefore, since I'm in charge of my perception, then I'm in charge of my genes, and therefore I'm not a victim of anything other than my perception, because our perceptions aren't just created by us. We are programmed to buy perceptions from parents, family, community, teachers, etc. And so a lot of the perceptions that control our lives didn't come from us, but they came from other people. And then all of a sudden is then they control my life. I don't control my life because I bought their perceptions. And yet what we're all here for right now, Lorne, is the moment you change your perceptions is your ability now to change your genetic activity. And once we recognize that, it's like, oh my God, I can master my life. And I go, yes, you can.